Hey there, it's Leo from Firecrawl, and in this video, we'll be taking a look at the Claude Managed Agents. During the recording of this video, it is still in beta, but there's already a lot of features that we can already use. So for this video, I'll show you an overview of how you can add different tools, be it custom MCPs or native ones, to the Managed Agent. So at the end, we'll have a way to fetch for recent news and update tasks inside of Linear. All right, so this is how they explain the Claude Managed Agents architecture, but when you head over to the Claude console, you'll see a quick start, agent, sessions, environment, credential vaults. What is all that? Well, to give a quick explanation, let's look at this. So initially, we can independently set up agent, environment, and vaults. Because we'll be connecting third-party tools like Linear and Firecrawl, we need to provide an API key or do an OAuth authentication, and that is held inside of these vaults. So let's do that right now. I know it's the last option, and I also know you can use the quick start section, where in here you can just chat with Claude so that it configures everything. But I prefer not to take the easy route in this video, since if you understand the core way to implement this, then you'll likely know how to guide Claude to build exactly what you want instead of just iterating over and not getting really anywhere. So let's head over to Credential Vaults. You'll want to click on New Vault, and in here I'll add MCP Vaults. Now, the reason why it was created like this is that you can then use this vault in another project, in another agent with another environment. So having it organized with specific environment variables for different projects can just be the way you handle this. For my example, I'm just naming it MCP Vaults. Every MCP that I want to configure will be inside of here. So let me hit create. And now inside of the MCP Vault, I can click on Add Credential. This will be the Firecrawl MCP. Now let me click on Bearer Token, type in Custom Server. After I click on Custom Server, I'll click here again and type in the URL for Firecrawl's MCP, which is exactly this one and will be in the description of the video. After I add that, I'll just press enter. And in here, I'll have to add my Firecrawl API key. So let's head back to Firecrawl's dashboard. Let me type in Managed Agents, create key. Let me grab that key, head back to Managed Agents and type that in. I acknowledge this credential is shared and that I am responsible for its storage and use. So check that, click on Add Credential, and now you should see the status active. Let me click on Add Credential again, and now select Linear. So after typing in Linear, this is an OAuth. Let me type in Linear MCP, select this, and click to connect. After you do so, just follow along with whatever pops up so that you actually authenticate inside of your Linear project. All right, so we should be done with vaults, and now we can head over to environment. Now think of environments as your computer. It is not the session. It's actually an entire computer that can have many different sessions. To start running it, it's pretty simple. Just click on Add Environment. Here I can set something like my environment. The only hosting type currently is cloud. I can add a description, but I can also hit create and now see the current configuration that is added by default. Some issues will require you to come over here, click on edit, add some allowed hosts, toggle allow MCP server or not, and even specify the packages you want to be used. For now, let's leave everything as default. And with that, we should be done setting up the environment. Now let's set up our agent. When heading over to the agents page, you'll see a new agent button that when you click on it, it tries to guide you to build that using an LLM. But since maybe because it's in beta, it hasn't been performing that well. But you could head over to templates and take this as an example. By the way, I'd aim for a JSON configuration just because the structure is easier to set up, but essentially it's MCP servers array with a bunch of objects in there where you can define the URL for all of the MCPs you're using. Then in the tools array, you'll want to specify all of the tools from the MCPs that you want to use and when you want the agent to use it. If you want it to always allow the tool to be executed, or if you'd prefer it asking before it continues. Let's quickly try to describe our agent. So all I added was create a Linear plus Firecrawl agent that uses Firecrawl to search for recent AI news and adds the task to Linear. So let me hit generate. And this is one of the problems we get. So it didn't add the Firecrawl MCP server as well as its tool. But the good news is that to add this specific MCP server, it's pretty easy. Just go inside of that array and add the object with the name of that MCP as well as the URL with the type specified as URL. Then after adding that, let's add the tools, which will be right down here. And honestly, you don't need to add this manually. You could just get the structure from an already created template, send it over to Claude, and then tell it to add the specific MCP you want to use. But with this configuration, your agent should now understand that you're using MCP for Firecrawl as well as Linear. So when I click on Create Agent, you should see Firecrawl and Linear down here, as well as your system prompt, the model, everything you need. If you did something wrong and you need to edit that, just head up here and it's the same JSON that you can input. All right, so at this point, we have all the ingredients for our recipe. We have agents, we have the environment, and our specific vault with our credentials. Now we want to create a session. Again, since we already have our computer, which is the environment, the session will be an instance inside of that computer that will run our agent. So when I create the session, the configuration already expects the agent to be set up. So AI News to Linear Agent, the environment, my environment, and the credential vaults. You'll notice that the MCP servers are identified because of the agent that we selected, but it still doesn't have the credentials because we didn't add the vault with those credentials. So as soon as I do, all that is set up and we get the connected via MCP vaults label. Now what I want to do is select I own or am authorized to use this vault. Let me add a name to the session like session 1, and actually this is optional. I think a random name would be even better than session 1, but okay. We have resources where you can add your GitHub repository, a specific file, and I believe that adding that to the session just basically gets it over to the sandbox, because then the agent will be basically orchestrating whatever it sees inside of the sandbox, as well as everything that we've added as tools, which by the way is the only thing that contacts the vault with our environment variables and should be secure as such, because this way the harness, our agent, our LLM, and any provider will not have access to your API key. It'll just be running tools and MCPs that executes with those credentials. All right, so after adding everything, it's like if we were to send a post request to the sessions endpoint with all of the information, which will now create our actual session. And that is done by clicking on Create Session right now. Yeah, well, that did not work out as planned, but you can always go to inspect, check your console, and you should see an error where it's related to the MCP server host being blocked by the environment. Remember those environment configurations for the computer that we have? Well, let's cancel this, go back to the environment, click to go inside of that environment, and click to edit it. Here, we want to allow MCP server network access. After toggling that, let's click on Save Changes. Now I've configured the session the same way. I just didn't add the session 1 horrible name. And now after clicking on Create Session, it should work just fine. In here, let's test both MCPs at once. So fetch recent AI news for me and create tasks based on the 3 most important news in Linear. All right, so it started working on it. You can track through the debug section or from transcript. Transcript is mostly what it's sending off to the user. And with the debug, you can actually understand what these tools are doing. By clicking on the first tool usage, you'll see Firecrawl search being triggered at a limit of 10, searching for the latest AI news in 2025. So we need to update the year so that it's fetching for recent news. But honestly, building agents is a lot about iterating and making sure that eventually it performs the way you'd like it to. Now that it got all of the content, it's trying to use the Linear MCP to add it as an issue. Okay, it seems like it's done. If you go back to transcript, you'll see it better organized, better structured. It seems like it created the issues inside of Linear. So let's check that right now. Okay, seems like it did and added everything we need to know for that specific issue. Now, if you stop your session and it's idle and you want to type something in here, just go up to Actions, click on Send Events, and you should see this input field down here. And if you want to modify your agent, don't use the Ask Claude up here. Actually go to the Agents tab, select your agent, and up here, instead of clicking on Edit, click on these 3 buttons and select Guided Edit. This should open up this How Can I Help section along with your JSON, where you'll configure which MCP servers you want to use, the system prompt, agent, the model, and much more, which is similar to what you'd see in the Quick Start section. So yeah, those are the main features. Aside from that, I think there's a lot more to be discovered, a lot more use cases, by the way. And if you believe you found a useful use case for managed agents, please leave it down below in the comment section. I believe this will be even more powerful as soon as they integrate some kind of cron setup where it runs on a scheduled trigger, but the costs for doing so is something to really think about. That is it for today. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Till then.